So very nice. So we have our activity show guest and activity main. They are both set up at this point. We have this text view here, which is empty, and receive text view has an ID. So we should be good. Obviously, when we run this, we should see at least the first one as we saw before, right? So this is what you should see. I'm going to go ahead and get a new copy there. Very good. Not too bad, okay? Now we're not going to be able to see the next activity unless we come here in the main and point to the second activity, which in this case we could do, but that's not the idea. The idea is to make sure that we, first of all, retrieve this enter guess the moment they hit the guess the name button so that we can hopefully be able to go to the next activity. But before we go that way, we want to figure out how do we then go at this point when we click on that guess name button to go to this second activity here. Not this one, of course, this second activity here, right? So how do we do that? Well, for that to happen, we have to do a few things. In fact, let me get rid of all of this at this point here. We don't need that. First of all, obviously, let's go ahead and fetch our button. So I'm going to say private. Say button, show guess. Let's go ahead and import our button there. Very good. And then inside here, I'm going to do what we have been doing for a while now. So say find by ID, r.id.guess button. There we go. Very good. And I'm going to go ahead and say show guess.set onClick listener. In this case, I'm just going to pass the new onClick listener as one instead of using what we've learned before, right? Because if we just have one button, we can just go ahead and do it this way. Or the other way, where we come to our here and go to our text and add, of course, the onClick or the click attribute, right? But I like to do things in code. Most times it's much easier. Very good. So in this case here, what we want to do is to go to the next screen. How do we do that? Well, the first thing we need to understand is that in order to go to the next screen, we have to start a new activity. But before we even start a new activity, we need to be able to tell the Android system what is the intent that we have in place, right? So there's this big class called intent that has a lot of things to it. But the intent allows us to add things to it, to tell the system our intent is to go to this screen from here, or our intent is to open Windows, or our intent is to open the caller ID, or our intent is to make a call, or our intent is to open a web page, and so forth, right? So this intent class is a very important one because it allows us to do all sort of things in the Android realm. So the first thing I need to do, I'm going to have to say intent, there we go, call this I, is equal to new intent as such. Now we have to pass a few things. In fact, we don't have to pass, but because we know this intent is specifically going to allow us to go from one activity, which means this activity, main activity, to show guess activity, the next activity, we need to specify where we are starting things off and where we're going. So we are starting from where? We're starting from main activity, this, and we're going to our show guess activity class as such. Now we have to pass class because at this point the activity, the intent, just wants to know where I'm coming from, the package context as it says here. And the show guess class here, it just says, okay, just give me the class and then I'll deal with everything else that needs to be done. Okay, so we're passing our context. In this case, it's going to be main.this because this is where we're coming from, and we're going to show that activity, but show guess that class. Okay, that is the syntax. But that's not all, because now we have this intent. We need to pass this intent to another method called start activity, because we need to start this second activity, show guess, right? So to do that, we come down here, we say start activity. Now, the reason why this method is available to us, in fact, look at this, start activity, it expects an intent type, which we already have. So if I do like that and pass the intent, then it will know, okay, when we click, we're going to create an intent. What is intent? Well, the intent is to go from main activity this, so this context here, this activity, to the next one, which is show guess, right? And we pass that intent there. So as I was saying, start activity is available because we are inside of an app compat activity, right? Very good. So in this case here, if we go ahead and save this, in fact, let me go ahead and comment all of these life cycles out so we end up not having all those issues, not issues necessarily, but distractions, if you will. Okay, let's save this and run real quick. Oops. I'm going to just go ahead and use same selection for the future so we don't have to do the same thing all the time. All right, there we go. So now if I click, voila, it's showing the next activity. If I even go back, it's going to go back to that primary activity, the first one. Look at this. So now we have a stack of activities that are showing. So if you go back, it goes away and brings back to the first one. That's it. So every time you want to start a new activity, you just have to create an intent and make sure you tell it where you're coming from. Well, I'm coming from here, main activity like this. Where are you going? I'm going to show guest activity or any other activity that you want to create. And that's not the end of everything. You have to go ahead and say start activity as such. Now, you notice that we could have done all of these in one line, right? Because we know that intent has to be passed inside of a start activity, and we're instantiating here. This is nice because there are times we want to pass more things inside of our intent here. You will see later. It's nice to instantiate as it is so that it's easy for us to add things to our intent object before we pass it along. But in cases where we're not passing anything else in our intent, you can just go ahead and literally take all of this and put inside here, right? Like that. So you will see in many cases people using something like this. So start activity, and you just pass the object of intent here, and you pass in the meaning like this, so meaning wherever you are and where you want to go. Save this again, you should see that should also do the same thing. So go back. We go to the next activity, go down here, and shows like that. Now, we're not seeing anything in our next activity because, as you saw, we don't have anything showing here. We do have, of course, the text view, but it's empty. It doesn't have anything. That's why we don't see anything when we go there. Very good. So we were able to tie in a second activity, a second window, a second view to our very simple application here. Very good. Nice. So the next video we're going to be doing is actually being able to transport, first of all, actually be able to get the information that we let users enter. And so when they say guess the name, we are going to fetch this information here inside of our field, edit text, fetch that, and then be able to pass it to our show guess. And within our show guess activity here, we're going to be able to retrieve that information that we got from the first activity and show it inside of our text view. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing next. I'll see you next.